Welcome to The Deep Dive, brought to you by the Summary Studio. If you're looking to cut through the noise and get straight to the most impactful insights, well, you are definitely in the right place. Make sure you like this deep dive and subscribe to the Summary Studio. That way you won't miss out on any of our future explorations. Today, we're taking a shortcut, really, to becoming better informed on a topic that, let's face it, touches everyone: money. We're diving deep into Morgan Housel's acclaimed book, The Psychology of Money: A Behavioral Guide to Wealth.
And what's really fascinating about Housel's work, I think, is how he just flips the script on, traditional personal finance. It's not really about complex economic models or trying to predict exactly where the market's going next. His core argument really is that achieving financial success is, well, less about how smart you are or what formulas you know, and much, much more about your actual behavior, your psychology.
Exactly. It's such a refreshing way to look at it. So our mission for you today is pretty clear. We want to pull out the most important, the most potent insights from this book, challenge some of those common ideas about wealth, and maybe offer some genuinely surprising, actionable ideas for your own financial path. So yeah, if you're ready, let's unpack this. Okay, so Housel kicks things off right away, setting a powerful stage. Introduction, Chapter 1, both called No One's Crazy. When I first saw that title, I was like, okay, what's he getting at here? What's the core message?
It's really the foundation for everything else, actually. Housel is emphasizing that, every single person makes financial choices based on their unique life experiences. Think about your upbringing, the economy you grew up in, what might seem totally irrational, maybe even crazy to one person. Like, say, someone who lived through the dot-com boom versus someone who only started investing after 2008. Well, it makes perfect sense to them because of that personal history. Your background just profoundly shapes how you see money, risk, reward, everything.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's a huge reminder that personal finance is, well, deeply personal. There's just no single right answer for everyone, no one size fits all.
Right. It explains so much about why different people, different generations even, approach investing so differently. So building on that personal context, he then jumps into luck and risk. How does he connect those two?
Well, he basically positions them as two sides of the same coin, almost like siblings,
Yeah.
And they often have way more influence on how things turn out financially than we like to admit. We tend to judge success or failure purely by the outcome we see. We don't always stop to think, okay, what part of this was actually in their control and what part was not?
Good point.
He uses that really powerful example of Bill Gates. He points out Gates was incredibly lucky just to attend one of the only schools in the whole world back in 1968 that even had a computer. Now, that doesn't take away from Gates's genius, obviously.
Of course not.
But it shows that huge success often involves a big slice of pure chance. It kind of forces us to ask, okay, what external factors, good or bad, were maybe at play here? Having that humility when we look at outcomes, both our own and others, is really crucial. Helps us be more compassionate too.
Yeah, that really grounds the discussion. Humility and compassion. Okay, and then Housel hits us with Chapter 3, Never Enough. This one really stuck with me. What's the deep insight here?
This chapter is all about the power, the absolute necessity of defining what enough means for you. It's a critical money skill. Housel shows how constantly chasing more, just endlessly pushing the goalposts, can actually lead to disaster. He uses those cautionary tales, like the insider traders who already had millions.
Right, they had everything.
Exactly. But they threw it all away, wanting just a little bit more. The big takeaway is that real wealth isn't only about what you earn. Crucially, it's about what you manage not to lose.
What you avoid losing. That's a powerful distinction. It really shifts the focus.
Yeah, it really does. From just accumulation to, well, preservation and maybe even contentment.
Okay, that idea of enough is definitely key. Now, speaking of accumulation, one concept that really jumped out at me was in Chapter 4, confounding compounding. We hear that term a lot, but Housel really clarifies why it's so potent.
Oh, absolutely. It gets talked about, but I don't think people always grasp the sheer scale of it. Housel uses Warren Buffett as the prime example. Buffett's incredible wealth isn't just because he's a brilliant investor, though he obviously is. It's because he started investing when he was basically a kid.
Yeah, like 10 years old or something crazy?
Right. He's been doing it consistently for, over 70 years now? It just highlights the extraordinary, almost unbelievable power of making even small, steady gains and then letting them sit untouched for a very, very long time. The magic isn't just time in the market. It's giving that time the chance to work on your money without being interrupted.
An uninterrupted time.
Exactly. Buffett's genius wasn't only starting early, it was also his incredible discipline in not messing with it, resisting the urge to panic sell or pull money out or chase some hot new trend. Time really is your biggest asset, but only if you let it do its job.
It's like a financial superpower almost, if you can just leave it alone. And that leads perfectly into another key distinction Housel makes in Chapter 5. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Why are those two so different?
Oh, they're completely different skill sets.
Yeah.
He argues that getting rich often takes some risk-taking, optimism, maybe even a bit of boldness to grab opportunities.
Yeah.
But staying rich, that needs a totally different mindset. It demands humility, definitely frugality, and maybe even, he suggests, a healthy dose of paranoia, a fear of losing what you've worked so hard to build.
Paranoia, interesting.
Well, maybe caution is a better word. But the core idea, he says, the foundation of long-term wealth, is simply survival. It's about not getting wiped out, not making that one huge mistake that undoes years or even decades of careful work.
Survival. Wow. That feels almost counterintuitive when we usually think about chasing big financial wins. And speaking of counterintuitive, Chapter 6, Tails You Win, offers another really interesting angle on investing.
Yeah, the tail events idea. This basically reveals that in many areas, including investing, a very small number of events, the outliers, the tails on the probability curve, account for the vast majority of the results. Think about like Amazon's massive success compared to thousands of failed .coms.
Or one-hit movie funding a whole studio for years.
Exactly. So the insight for investing is you don't necessarily need every pick to be a winner. You don't even need most of them to be winners. You just need to position yourself so that you benefit massively from those few really big tailwinds, the ones with limited downside but potentially huge upside, and then be patient enough for them to happen.
That really changes how you might think about diversification and risk, doesn't it? Less about avoiding all losses, more about capturing those big wins. So if you're talking about building wealth that lasts, what's the ultimate point? Chapter 7 redefines wealth quite beautifully with one word: freedom.
Yes. For me, this is one of the absolute core insights of the whole book. Housel argues that the highest form of wealth isn't just piling up assets. It's gaining the ability to control your own time. That's it. True wealth, he says, is waking up in the morning and being able to genuinely say, I can do whatever I want today. It's the ultimate autonomy.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really shifts the goalpost, doesn't it? Away from just stuff towards accumulating choices, independence.
It absolutely does. And he supports this with ideas like the man in the car paradox in Chapter 8 and Chapter 9, wealth is what you don't see. These really dig into why we chase those visible markers of success.
Precisely. It forces you to ask yourself, why do we want that fancy car or expensive watch?
Yeah.
Housel makes this brilliant point. We often think that when we buy that expensive thing, people will admire us. But in reality, they're usually just admiring the thing itself.
Or thinking, wow, I wish I had that car.
Exactly. They're not necessarily thinking, wow, that person driving it is amazing. Meanwhile, true wealth, your savings, your investments, your financial cushion that's mostly invisible, spending is loud. Wealth is often quiet. The big takeaway is simple, but so hard to actually live by in our culture. Don't focus on looking rich. Focus on being rich.
Looking rich versus being rich. Fantastic distinction. It really forces you to think about priorities. So, okay, for building that invisible wealth, what's Housel's advice in Chapter 10? Save money. It seems obvious, but he has a unique take.
His take is almost radically simple. You don't actually need a specific, detailed reason why you're saving. Savings, just by existing, provide options. They give you flexibility, freedom, a buffer against the unexpected, regardless of whether you have a specific goal like a down payment or retirement yet. He calls saving the gap between your ego and your income.
I love that phrase.
It's great, isn't it? It's a powerful reminder that managing your spending is often less about sacrifice and more about managing your self-image. Resisting that urge to keep up, to impress. It's about building that buffer, creating future choices you can't even imagine yet.
That really lands. It's not just about earnings, it's what you keep. Okay, moving from those core habits, Chapter 11 introduces something that really resonated with me. Reasonable rational. What's he getting at there?
This is all about practicality over theoretical perfection. Housel basically argues, look, you don't have to make the absolute mathematically optimal financial decision every single time. In fact, trying to be perfectly rational often leads to analysis paralysis, or you end up abandoning the perfect plan because it's too complicated or stressful.
Yeah, I can see that.
Instead, he says, aim for reasonable decisions. Decisions that you personally can actually stick with consistently over the long haul. Even when the market's going crazy or life throws you curveballs, a good enough plan that you actually follow for decades is infinitely better than a perfect plan you ditch after 6 months because it's just too demanding. The emotional cost of perfectionism is often too high.
That's such a relief to hear, honestly. It takes the pressure off being some kind of financial genius. And speaking of things not being perfect, Chapter 12, Surprise, and Chapter 13, Room for Error, feel incredibly relevant right now with how unpredictable everything seems.
Oh, definitely. Housel really stresses that the world is always changing. We should never expect the future to just be a repeat of the past, especially not in finance. So that begs the question, how on earth do you plan for stuff you can't possibly predict?
Right.
His answer is, build financial plans that are tough enough to survive surprises. Think big stuff. Pandemics, market crashes, losing your job unexpectedly. This ties right into Chapter 13's point about always needing a margin of safety. Basically, assume things will go wrong sometimes. Plan for it, prepare for setbacks rather than pretending they won't happen. It's about building financial resilience.
Resilience, that's the key word. And shifting back to the personal side, Chapter 14, You'll Change, is such an important reflection on, well, ourselves.
It's a crucial reminder, isn't it? The person you are today, with your current goals and desires, might not want the same things your future self will want. Our priorities evolve. So Housel cautions against locking yourself into really rigid, long-term financial commitments based purely on who you are right now.
Like buying a massive house assuming you'll want it forever.
Exactly. Or planning your entire retirement around a passion you might outgrow. Build flexibility into your plans to allow for that inevitable personal evolution. Trying to force your future self into today's mold can lead to a lot of regret down the line.
It's like future-proofing your finances against yourself. And then Chapter 15 hits us with a dose of reality. Nothing's free. What's the hidden price tag he's talking about here?
Housel is reminding us that everything in finance has a cost, even if it's not obvious, like a fee on an account statement. Take investing, for example. Volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty. Those aren't bugs in the system, they're features. They are the price you pay for the potential of achieving higher returns over the long term. Understanding this, really internalizing it, can totally change how you react when the market drops.
How so?
Well, if you accept that the market's ups and downs are just the admission fee for long-term growth, you're less likely to freak out and sell at the worst possible time.
Okay.
You reframe that discomfort. It's not a sign something is wrong. It's the necessary cost of playing the game.
The fee for returns. That's a great way to frame it. Okay, let's circle back to the human element. Chapter 16, You and Me, really drives home how different everyone's financial situation is.
Yeah, this chapter highlights that people are playing completely different games when it comes to money. Think about a day trader versus someone saving steadily for retirement in 30 years. They have totally different goals, different time horizons, different risk tolerances. The key takeaway here, and it's so often ignored, is never just blindly copy what someone else is doing with their money. Ever.
Why not?
Because their game might have totally different rules, different objectives, different stakes than your game. What's a brilliant move for them could be absolutely disastrous for you. You have to know what game you're playing.
That is such critical advice, especially now with social media showing everyone else's supposed wins. And speaking of outside influences, Chapter 17, The Seduction of Pessimism, is really insightful about how we process news.
Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? How bad news just feels more urgent, more credible, somehow smarter than good news. Even when, quietly, things might be steadily improving overall. Pessimism often sounds profound and intellectual, while optimism can come across as naive or uninformed.
So true.
Housel digs into why we have this inherent bias towards negativity and sensationalism, especially in financial news. It's really a call to just be aware of that bias in ourselves, understand how it can twist our perception and potentially lead to bad decisions.
It definitely explains why scary headlines get more clicks. Okay, and finally, Chapter 18, When You'll Believe Anything, feels like a really potent warning, especially for uncertain times like we sometimes face.
Yeah, in moments of high stress or uncertainty, when we feel vulnerable, we humans desperately crave certainty. We want answers, any answers. And that desperation, unfortunately, can make us susceptible to believing things that aren't true, misleading information, overly simple solutions, conspiracy theories, whatever, even if it goes against all logic.
So how do we guard against that?
Well, it raises that important question. How do we protect ourselves from making purely emotional decisions when our defenses are down?
Right.
Housel's warning is crystal clear. Avoid making big financial moves when you're in a heightened emotional state. Doesn't matter if it's extreme fear or irrational exuberance, your logic just takes a backseat when strong emotions are driving.
Wait until things calm down. Makes sense. So after exploring all these psychological traps and insights, what does it all mean for us? How does Housel pull it together? Chapter 19 is all together now, and then he shares his own approach in chapter 20, Confessions.
Yeah, he wraps it up beautifully. He basically synthesizes the whole message, reinforcing that core idea. Simplicity and consistency almost always beat complexity in trying to be a genius when it comes to money. The key principles he champions are surprisingly straightforward. Save consistently. Avoid bad debt. Be patient. Really patient. Plan for things going wrong. And stay humble about the future. He even shares his own personal habits, which are remarkably modest given his success. He lives relatively frugally, invests mainly in simple, low-cost index funds.
No complicated strategies.
Nope. And he prioritizes his time and independence way above luxury goods or chasing status. It's really practicing what he preaches.
Okay, so let's boil down those absolute top takeaways for everyone listening. It feels like they really shift your perspective. First, it seems clear. Behavior consistently wins out over intelligence and finance. It's more about discipline, patience, humility, less about your IQ or knowing fancy formulas.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
Second, time. Time is genuinely your single biggest asset for building wealth. Start as early as you can, stay consistent, and just let compounding do its thing. Let it work its magic for you.
Third, got to watch out for that lifestyle inflation, that tendency we all have to spend more just because we earn more. It makes it almost impossible to actually get ahead because the goalposts just keep moving further away. Just because you can spend more doesn't mean you should.
Such a key point. Fourth, remember Housel's definition. True wealth is freedom. It's not about the fancy stuff. It's about having control over your time, living life on your own terms, being free from financial worry dictating your choices.
And finally, number 5, always plan for surprises. Build in that margin of safety. Expect that markets will crash sometimes, jobs might be lost, emergencies will happen. Save with that in mind, knowing that the unpredictable is predictable in a way. It will happen. Wow, what an incredible deep dive into the psychology of money. It really does challenge so much of the conventional wisdom, doesn't it? That idea that finance is just numbers and charts.
It really does. It's such a powerful reminder that our own unique backgrounds, our biases, our emotions, those are often the biggest factors driving our financial outcomes, much more than any spreadsheet could ever predict.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some profound new insights, maybe shifted how you think about money even just a little bit. And as you reflect on all this, maybe consider this question. What's one deeply ingrained financial belief that you hold? Could it be simply a product of your unique personal history rather than some universal financial truth? Just thinking about how understanding your own psychology might fundamentally change your financial journey. It's pretty powerful stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. Remember to like this deep dive if you found it valuable, and definitely subscribe to the Summary Studio for more insights like this. We'll catch you next time.